Tillman? Mm-hmm. That was used for that swimming test that they had to pass in order to graduate from Winthrop. Dr. Johnson was very, very fearful. He thought that all the students were like his own children. And he was, and health and safety were very important to him, probably because of what had happened to him as a child, his trauma. But he thought that health and fitness was very, very important. And so he established that rule that you had to be able to pass the swimming test in order to graduate. And so that pool was just a lap pool. It was used for that. And now it's used to store rolls of toilet paper and things like that.
Why don't we use it?
Well, because once Peabody was built, we had a huge pool in Peabody. Actually, there were two pools. One that was, you guys ever watched It's a Wonderful Life?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have one of those, the floor opened up, there was a pool like that.
Oh my gosh.
And then there was the pool that was on the exterior that they had later that they used. So, it is not a need for it after they built gym, which was Peabody, yeah.
Is there a reason why Withers is across the street instead of like with the rest of the kids?
Yeah, there is, because Withers was a Presbyterian high school. It was a Presbyterian boys' school, and we bought that building. It was already constructed. So it actually, there was a lot of grassy space. There was no Dinkins, no library, that kind of thing, and that school was sort of over there. And then Winthrop bought it and made it the Winthrop Training School, which is where they taught and trained teachers how to teach in a classroom setting. And it was a functioning K through 12, well, first grade through 12, I don't know, they had kindergarten at some point. Obviously, they brought in the McPhee School, but so K through 12 up until the late 60s. So they actually have their own high school reunions, just like, Rock Hill High would have their reunion. So there are plenty of people that live in Rock Hill that are alums from the Winthrop Training School. They call it WTS. Like Suzanne Oakey over in the College of Education, she's a WTS alum. Jane Rawls, who works over in the College of Ed. Walter Harden went to WTS. So I don't think he graduated from there. I think he actually just went to little small grades like McPhee. So
It looks like Hogwarts.
yeah, it looks like Hogwarts. Well, a lot of the buildings here, a lot of have roots in architecture from around the world, like the McBride Hall, which is modeled after Christ Church, I believe. And again, David Bancroft Johnson wanted his women to be very cultured. He said, we want to bring the world to Winthrop and Winthrop to the world. And so he did things like, when he traveled to Europe extensively, he came back and said, okay, we need, this frieze here, the one that's up in Tillman Hall above with the horses and everything. We need that, we need the Nike statue. We need, so he would, some things were donated like by the French department or whatever, but he had a large influence on the art and the art history that was being displayed around campus, because a lot of people would never leave the state of South Carolina. A lot of teachers, he was training them to teach in South Carolina, and they may never leave the state. So he wanted to make sure they were cultured. If there was somebody, living or dead that I could meet, I'd love to sit down with D.B. Johnson, because I think he was a pretty neat guy. And if you want to get to know a little bit about him, you can go to the archives and read his papers. He kept very detailed journal-type papers, or there were minutes of meetings and things like that, and different ceremonies he had. And you can look at the collection of things. He had a lot to say, and he was very well loved among educators.
And is that why we have to do cultural events?
Cultural events, actually, there was a program called the STAR course that was the long time ago precursor to cultural events, and yes, I think it had a lot to do with his influence. And then that didn't come back again until Phil Lader was president here in the 80s, and he reinstituted the cultural events requirement, calling it that. But yeah, it's again to expand your knowledge and make sure that you have that wide breadth of knowledge. So, all right, you see, Rebecca knew that I would go forever and ever and ever. If you ever have any questions about Winthrop, please email me. If you go to winthropalumni.com, to meet the staff over there on the side, you can find my email address. Rebecca has my email address. I love to talk about Winthrop and Winthrop history. Other people on this campus that love to talk about Winthrop history: Gina Price White over in the archives, and Andy Johnson over in the archives. Walter Harden, who you'll be hearing from, Deanna Brooks. The four of us kind of try to make sure that nothing gets thrown away. And I'll tell you two quick things, and then I'll shut up. One reason that it's important to not throw things away and preserve history is that we had a great case last week. We had this gentleman called our office, 72 years old, PhD, lives in Florida, Jacksonville. He said, I've never seen a photograph of my mother, and I'm hoping you can help me. What? he said, when I was 17 years old, I went to a family gathering and of some classmates of mine in high school, and a woman came up to me and said, "Oh, I knew your mother, Nola." And he said, "My mother's name is not Nola, my mother's name is Dora."